This is the Unleash Your Life podcast, where you're going to learn what your power leaks are and, more importantly, how to plug them. I'm your host, Lane Smith Brown. I'm a best-selling author and the founder and coach over at lanesmithbrown.com. And over the last 20 years, I've been guiding people back to their truest selves. You see, most of us are caught in our stories, so we stay trapped. I call those stories power leaks. And when we understand how those power leaks are playing out in our life, we can make a choice to step back into our power. If you're interested in learning more, you can pop over to lanesmithbrown.com. But for now, kick back with a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, or a bag of Doritos, and let's talk about getting what's in the way out of the way through the lens of simple, practical, and easy to understand tools and insights that will make a powerful impact on your life starting today. I trust you'll stick around because I'd certainly love the company. Hello, all of you beautiful beings, and welcome to the show. I'm Lane Smith Brown, and this is episode number 14. And today we're going to continue our discussion on how we drift through our life. And this time, we're focusing on how we hold on to the past. Many of us know what it feels like to get stuck in resentment, regret, remorse, shame, and grudges. And the reasons we get stuck are often really subtle. So we don't even realize how entrenched we are until one day we can see it plain as day. Maybe this day will be that day for you. Remember that you came with purpose and intention, and you came with some gifts. Your job is to remember who you are before you develop the power leaks that we're addressing today. Now, if this show isn't for you and you don't have these areas of disconnection, it may be for someone you love. So stick with me as we dig in here. And maybe you can be of service to someone else. It may seem crazy, but in my experience, many women are still convinced that holding themselves back will somehow eventually propel them forward in some way. And they have developed habits that have them living their life in reverse. This happens when we get caught in thought loops that center around what happened, instead of what's standing right in front of you right now. Here, let me show you how. Most of us had kidhoods that were filled with experiences that left us feeling disconnected from ourselves. When those types of things happen to us often enough, the feelings they produce get pretty ingrained. And even though the reality of that disconnection is of no service to us, there is an addiction that forms without us even noticing. We have a kidhood filled with confusion, disappointment, anger, silence, and other forms of pain. And if it happens consistently enough, we end up forming secret addictions to those feelings on an energetic level. So we unconsciously find ourselves in situations that result in more of those kidhood feelings showing up all the way into our adulthood. Remember, the ego's sole purpose is to keep us safe, and it is under the impression that in order to keep us safe, it has to keep us in the familiar. If this is a new line for you and this is the first show that you're listening to, go back to the beginning because you're going to find some really, really good tools that we're building on here. So, because of that tendency that our ego has, we inadvertently become an energetic match to all kinds of people and situations that reinforce our secret addictions. When you find yourself looking back at your life, it could be at your childhood, it could be a past relationship, it could be a conversation you had last week, or it could be the way you talk to yourself about yourself. You know, all those mistakes you've made over a lifetime, all the judgments you have about yourself. When you find yourself going down memory lane, but the memory isn't filled with anything sweet or soft or tender, Instead, it's filled with regret, resentment, grief, shame, grudges, and disappointment. You're caught in your addiction. It's happened to me many, many times. Years ago, a relationship I thought would last forever ended, and it ended pretty badly. And through a very peculiar set of circumstances, I ended up by myself on a piece of property in the middle of nowhere. None of that was my dream or desire. It had been my former partner's dream and desire, but I was the one stuck with it. Not only was I in a very remote location, it was a mess. I was all alone with all of my good friends and the small amount of family I had over 1,000 miles away. I had unceremoniously landed on a piece of land that was overgrown and overrun, with a house that most people would have called untenable. Now, 4 years earlier than that, I had moved across country to create a dream with a bunch of old friends in a part of the country I was unfamiliar with. Now, over a decade earlier than that, this small group of dreamers had come up with this idea of creating an art house for artists to perform, display their work, connect with each other. A beautiful, inviting space that honored the creative. It was a fairly vague idea, but every time we got together over the years, we found ourselves talking about it. The dream never lost its intensity. We had looked for land from one end of the country to the other, and nothing resonated. Until one day, I got a call at work to say 2 of my good friends had found just the right spot. It was in a town of 39 people with an old Catholic rectory that hadn't been used for its intended purpose for decades. It was run down, but showed promise. And on a quick weekend reconnaissance mission to check it out, I decided within minutes that I was ready to jump in. I went home and quit my job, sold my house, and took a 6-month trip through Europe, and then drove 1,000 miles to the soon-to-be art house. It didn't take me long to realize that over the 10 years since the dream began, my friends and I had very different priorities, values, and beliefs. I had changed too much and no longer fit in. The answers to the question I should have asked before moving were suddenly very clear, but it was way too late to address them. There I was in someone else's dream, and I was seemingly 1,000,000 miles away from home. I knew I needed to leave, but I couldn't. I couldn't easily go back to the city I loved or the job or home I had there. All of that was gone. About a decade after the art house fell apart for me, a second opportunity came that was even better than the first. A magnificent setting, a magnificent building, solid funding, and an idea that the whole community lit up about. A retreat center focused on personal development and health. There would be organic gardens and fine dining, world-class speakers, well-appointed rooms, and me smack dab in the center of my comfort zone. It was perfect. My business cohort and I had a 5-year plan, and we began with nothing but enthusiasm. We started building a team and making changes to the facility. Our plan was unfolding quickly. And 3.5 months into the project, the landlord broke the lease in favor of a sale. And as a result, the funding disappeared. All of us were left dumbfounded and utterly broken and completely in shock. 3 big disappointments inside of a decade, and each of them had me reeling. I indulged myself heartily in resentment, regret, grudges, shame, and disappointment. until I could get far enough away from each one in time to see the gifts they'd offered me. Selling my city house, when I did, in order to be part of the art house, created a good chunk of cash that allowed me to travel through Europe for 6 months on my bike and having enough to live on for a year while we all redeemed a century-old 6,000 square foot run-down brick farmhouse into all of its former glory. The work was satisfying. I learned to demolish and rebuild. I learned to drywall and paint and cut trim work. I learned about wells and septic tanks and needing to be resourceful. I learned skills that were outside my initial interests, but were so satisfying to know. But more importantly than all of that, this setting served as a place where I found myself in more ways than one. And after a year and a half, I found the courage to walk away from something that wasn't true for me and found a new dream, my dream. And in so doing, caught one of my first glimpses of the authentic me. In the new city, an hour and a half away from where I had first landed, I started my own company in a community that supported me in such a fantastic way that I got to be involved in some amazing projects and opportunities. Those projects and events still hold some incredibly fond memories for me. Branching out on my own allowed me to see my gifts and abilities, and it built my confidence. It helped me catch another glimpse of who I came to be. The relationship that ended prior to me landing in the middle of nowhere on a piece of land that was never my dream was the death of me giving myself away to someone who could not see me, mostly because when we met, I couldn't see myself. I came out of that relationship understanding that I had no clue who I was or what I wanted. So I spent 3 years in a desolate and lonely place, healing, regrouping, and doing the type of work we're doing here on this show so that I could rid myself of my power leaks and begin my journey to remembering who I came to be and what I came to do. I also got to use the skills that I had learned at the art house to redeem this rundown country property. The house transformed, the yard transformed, and I transformed. The eyesore turned into a piece of paradise, but it took a great deal of work. I also found out that this busy city girl was built for the kind of life that thrives in the quietness of the country, where one can not only hear the buzz of the hummingbirds, but also the chirp of the crickets and the clicking of the lightning bugs, where one can sit under stars so big and so bright against a dark blue sky and fold oneself into the all that is and be part of something far greater than my little home in the middle of nowhere. While I was in that place that I did not choose, getting to know myself and remembering the me I came to be, Callie was living her life more than 1,500 miles away. We met on a dating app. She was a mountain girl like me, with a dream to have enough land for horses. She didn't know that that's exactly what I had when we began to talk, and I didn't know that that's what she was longing for. Both of our higher priorities were that we wanted to be with someone who'd done their work, who made a spiritual walk their highest priority. Someone with a big sense of humor who loved the outdoors and the company of hummingbirds, crickets, lightning bugs, dogs, cats, and all of the other creatures living in the woods and fields. When we finally met in person, it was like going home for both of us. We knew each other without saying a word. Now, that does not mean it's always been easy, but I dare say, for now, it is a perfect match. Each of those 3 stories were much more complex than I've described here. The lessons were messy and hard and confusing and painful. I spent so much time being angry and scared and overwhelmed. I was in a mess and I was all alone. I was as confused as anyone could be at why things happened the way they did. And it is only in retrospect that I can see the gifts. The retreat center is still a bit of a mystery. It might have been my secret addiction to needing to be disappointed, which is something I discussed back in episode 13. So if you haven't read or listened to that one yet, do so, because it's full of some pretty good information. Whatever it was, it got me to a place of understanding myself even better. And there's no loss in that. Kelly and I moved back to the mountains a few years ago, and I am both happy and content. Our whole family is healthy and enjoying life, and we're looking for land again because this city girl longs to hear the birds and bugs again while sitting under an enormous sky, under a gigantic moon and a blanket of stars. Turns out I am creating my own retreat center online and meeting people from all over the world, and it will perhaps be more perfect for me than the other retreat center would have been. Maybe I'll never know that for sure. Some things are a mystery, but the truth, all of those uncomfortable, painful, disappointing situations came with gifts. All of them are a part of why I am who I am. Through all of the pain and confusion and disappointment and resentment, I've discovered more and more about who I came to be and what I've come to offer. Now, it doesn't take me quite so long these days to get to the place of peace when life doesn't go as planned. The resistance only seems to prolong the pain. So I'm learning to view unexpected situations as surprises from the universe, and that there is a gift and magic in everything if you can wait a bit until you can see them. I've learned to let go of agenda and wait for the unfolding. People who knew me 10 years ago would not recognize me now, and I kind of like that. I was less of who I came to be back then. This version is so much closer to that. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, maybe there's something you're having difficulty reconciling. There's something or someone that hurt or disappointed you, and you wish you could go back and change it. Maybe it's got you stuck in the mire of a grudge that only serves to keep you stuck in an energy that will offer you no peace. And it has you missing out on the gift that situation came with. I used to think a time machine was what I needed, to go back and change things, to say something that would win the day, to alter my state of reality for the better, to somehow undo what had been done. I doubt I'm alone. Have you ever dreamed of something like this? Maybe you still do. But what happens when you tether yourself to the past like that? Well, you stay there, spinning, lost in time and space, missing out on all that could be right in front of you right now. If you choose to be in curiosity and anticipation instead of fear, regret, grudges, shame, and disappointment. But how do you move on? Well, this is a big one. How do you move on? You move on. I know that's super technical and difficult to hear, But if you don't deliberately change, you will continue to get what you get. Oh, it may seem better for a bit, but if you're swimming in a power lake of bitterness, shame, regret, disappointment, anger, and grudges, you stay an energetic match to those things. No matter what it is, no matter how unfair it was, no matter how mean they were, no matter what they took from you, let it go. Find the gift. Even if that gift is that you now know where your line is. My God, you know where your line is. That's more than most people pick up in a lifetime. Drop the resentment. Drop the regret, the grudges, the bitterness, the shame, or the disappointment. Drop it like it's a hot potato, because it is. And the only one who ever gets burned is you. It happened, but it is no longer happening. It's a story that you're stuck in. And there's no power in holding on to old shit that you can't change. Drop the pain. Pick up the gift. Write it out. Talk it out. Hey, when I got dumped on that country piece of property in the middle of nowhere, I walked country roads for 3 freaking months and cried and shouted until I lost my voice. I got it out of me so I could find my way back. Do it. Do whatever it takes to get rid of the pain and find the fucking gift. If this is resonating with you and you want a bit more help, I get it. I'm going to plug my book here, which I've not done yet in the series of this show. But Weird Hummingbirds Unleash Your Life is packed with more detail of the process that I went through to get through my shit, and particularly on the stories that I told today. It can show you some really, really great tools to walk you through many different power lakes. Just scroll down in the show notes and you'll find the links there. But on that note, as we're about to wrap up the show, let me ask you, what did this all trigger for you? What have you decided to hold on to that is causing you nothing but pain and disconnection? You know the saying about choosing not to forgive? Holding resentment or grudges is like taking poison but expecting someone else to die. It's true. Do you need to forgive someone? Do you need to let yourself off the hook? What do you need to let go of so you can move on? Find the gift, sisters. Find the gift. All right, that wraps up things for this week. I trust you got a nugget to help you stand more fully in the truth of who you are and the life you've come to live. If the show wasn't for you, was it for someone you care about? Share it with them. If you can see it helping, help them move on. Let's quit wasting our energy and start filling up on our authentic power, our true authentic power. Let's get back to changing ourselves and the world for the better. On that note, if you haven't taken advantage of my free resources, listen to the outro for more details on how you can get them right here and right now. It's always nice to have a little helping hand, don't you think? Well, I sure do. See you next time, women. Thanks for listening. Well, I hope this show rocked your world a little bit. If you're ready to take this learning to a whole new level, pop over to lanesmithbrown.com and sign up for our weekly Wild Wonderings email and check out the coaching options as well. Oh, and if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast, will you? It's how we get these tools into the world and change the world for the better. Ta for now.